This week's On the Ledge is supported by True Leaf Market, the indoor and outdoor growing experts. US listeners, you can get 10% off your first purchase at trueleafmarket.com now using the code ONTheLedge. Whether you want to grow shiitake mushrooms or start sprouting your own tasty salads, True Leaf Market has all the kit to make it happen. Check out their detailed starter guides on the trueleafmarket.com website to guide you every step of the way in your growing journey. So, get 10% off your first purchase at True Leaf Market now using the code ONTheLedge. True Leaf Market's products come with a 30-day satisfaction guarantee, so I know you won't be disappointed. True Leaf Market, bringing the seed you need. Hello and welcome to On the Ledge podcast. If you're suffering from window envy and your house or home is dark and gloomy, this is the episode for you. I'm talking to Lisa Eldred Steinkopf, aka the Houseplant Guru, about her new book Grow in the Dark and all the wonderful houseplants that you can grow in less than ideal light conditions. I'll also be answering a question about why many houseplants have red undersides, and I'll be bringing you a little preview of what we've got coming up in the 100th episode. Yes, it's nearly here. Thank you to all my Patreon subscribers. They've been joined this week by Jess, who's become a crazy plant person, Cody and Casey, who have both become On the Ledge super fans, which means they get to join the On the Ledge advisory board and get an exclusive postcard that nobody else even gets to see. So well done to all of them. Details of how to become a patron are in my show notes as always. Thank you to all of you who have sent me messages for the 100th episode. The opportunity has now passed. I am working on the episode this week, so if you haven't sent a message, I'm afraid you won't be able to be included in the show. But, if you love On the Ledge and you want to tell me that will be fine. I would still love to hear from you. ontheledgepodcast@gmail.com is the best place for all of your comments, tips, queries and requests for things to cover in the show. It's a blast working on this 100th episode, I have to say. There'll be a bloopers reel at the end with I think the summary of it will be don't work with children and animals, and that will be fun. But it'll also be the things I've learnt from working on the Ledge, your comments, of course, and a lot of shout outs and thank you to the people who've helped me along the way. Plus, I'm also giving away something rather awesome. I'm going to be doing a giveaway for a Mother Bloom grow light. This is an LED grow light, which is very, very stylish. You may remember it from my episode where I went to the Netherlands, and I'm giving one away. This is a global giveaway because they post globally. So one lucky listener will get a Mother grow light. I will post all the details of how to enter in my episode 100 show notes. So do listen out for that. But in the meantime, let's get on with this week's show. Grow in the Dark is the new book from Lisa Eldred Steinkopf, and if you've binge listened to every episode of On the Ledge, you may remember that she appeared back in episode 28 talking about her first book, Houseplants, The Complete Guide. Now she's focused in on the plants that will grow if your windows are small, maybe you don't have that many windows, or maybe they're all facing north. She's got loads of tips and tricks and suggestions for dealing with these kind of situations, which are helpful to all of us who've got anything less than a greenhouse to be growing in. I called her up for a chat about how the book came about, some of the big hitters in the shady houseplants world, how to make the most of the light you've got, and also how to tell if your plant really is unhappy with its light conditions.
Hi, Jane. It's Lisa Steinkopf over here in America. Luckily, we're not drowning yet, but it's very wet over here. But I've been inside working with my houseplants because that's what I do all the time. If I can, when I have time and I'm not writing, I'm puttering with my houseplants because I'm the Houseplant Guru. Yay!
Sounds lovely. That sounds like just the kind of thing that I like to do. And I wish that I would had some of that rain over here. Send some my way because we've had a very dry spring here and I've been doing rain dances trying to get it to rain here. So yeah, we need some of that over this way.
it's just crazy. Like the people in middle America would just die to give away the water. That's literally all that's showing is their rooftops.
Weather is a great factor, isn't it, for the outdoor garden? But that's one of the delights of indoor gardening, is that this is not so much of a factor. But a big factor is what you're covering in your new book, with a seamless segue. Your new book looks at plants that will grow in less than ideal light conditions, grow in the dark. This is a great topic because it's an absolute perennial question. About houseplants is, I've got no light, what can I grow? So this is a great topic to be tackled in your book. Was that why you wrote it? Because you had so many people going, tell us the answer, Lisa.
You know what? I'm gonna tell you, the copy, or not the copy editor, but one of the editors of the last book that was setting up the first book. She was a young, I'm going to say millennial because that's what they are. They hate us when we call them that, but and when she says I've learned so much just laying out your book and reading your book, and I love it. She goes, but I'm in an apartment and I have no light, so let's write a book about low light houseplants. So it was really all her idea, and I give her the credit and the acknowledgments. It's her idea, and I'm like, sure, that works for me. So we ran with it, and but it is one of the biggest questions I have. I have no light, or what can I grow? But the thing is, I tell them to really, really figure out how much light you have. Do you have a crisp shadow when the sun's coming through the window? Is there no sun coming through the window? Which way do you face? That is my big thing. Are you facing east, west, north, south? That's a big thing with me because we own a garden center. A lot of people, you'll ask them, which way does your house face? So we can sell them a shrub that works in that. And they just tell me it points toward the road. My house faces the road. And I'm like, okay, so I'm really sarcastic, If the sun comes up in your window in the morning, it faces east.
That's really interesting. It's so interesting because you're absolutely right. Lots of people don't know that. And as a gardener, that's the first thing I want to find out. I mean, it reminds me of that. I don't know if you watched The Wire, but in The Wire, there's an episode where this policeman gets drilled on always knowing exactly where you are, like what street intersection you're at, so that if there's an incident, you can call it in and know your exact location. And for a gardener, it's kind of the same. You need to know the aspect of your property so that you know exactly what light you're getting. But it's amazing how many people don't know that.
No, I bought a house facing west or east. I've had two houses. They both faced east. I would have bought one across the street if that was what was for sale, but I'm very happy because then I can have rhododendrons and azaleas and dogwoods and all those things that kind of need protection here, but love that east sun.
Okay, yeah, my house is on a north-south axis, which is not ideal. So I have hardly any. Do I have any? I don't think I have any. I have one window that faces west. So yes, there's not a great deal of. It's not ideal, but there we go. But I have got a big. My north-facing back of my house faces north, but it's got a big glass-roofed room, which is brilliant for plants. So that is a big plus. So when you're in your house, presumably you've looked at the map and you've established whether you're north, south, east or west. What then, once you know which way your windows face, can you assess in terms of how the light is coming in? I mean, are there some simple pointers in terms of, without going to the extent of getting a light meter, which some people might want to go down the route of, but assuming you don't want to do that, how do you tell how strong the light is?
Well, the first thing I tell them is, look out. So you know which way you face. You may face south, but if you have a evergreen shrub, a house 3 feet away, or another apartment building, an awning, there's other factors. But let's assume that you have an open area, so you're getting the total east sun. So first of all, I tell people read your plant tags, which I know can be the wrong thing to say sometimes, because they'll just say, hi, I'm a houseplant. Or they may be the wrong tag. We're all human, and tags get mixed up. So I tell them that if there's not a picture on the tag, first Google it. Google the plant that's on the tag says it is, and make sure it looks like the plant that you have. But then if it is, read the tag. Does it say medium light, low light, or high light? And then in the book, I give them a little chart. If it says high light, bright light, full sun, then that probably needs a south window or a really close to a west window, because that's where your biggest full sun situation is. Mm-hmm. If it says it needs medium light, then you're heading through your west window or your east window. If it says low light, you can come back 3 or 4 feet from a south window or a few feet from a west window, put it in the east window, or then maybe now you can have some plants in the north window.
I guess the meat of this book is your listing of your top 50 low light houseplants. Let's dive right in there. What's at number? Is it ranked or is it just 50 plants?
No,
what's at number one?
They want it the alphabetical. They made me.
Okay.
It's alphabetical by common name.
Okay, but is there one that you kind of what's your sort of number one recommendation?
I think the low light plant recommendation number one is the ZZ plant.
Yes.
I swear I think it could probably. I tell people it could probably grow in a closet, but let's not put it there. It can take really low light and survive and almost thrive in really low light and hardly any water because it has that fleshy root system. I also think the pothos, the all dark green one, really does well. I know a lot of people say the snake plant, but I don't know, most of us know, if you're really good with plants, that a snake plant it will survive in low light. It's not going to thrive. If we put it in full sun, it's going to thrive and break a pot and send out flowers and procreate like nobody's business. But it will survive in low light. So, that's another choice. Pothos, ZZ plant, philodendrons. I think my grape ivy does pretty good without a lot of sun. Some of the calatheas, the silver satin pothos does very well with not much light.
If you're trying something out in a lower light situation, what's the first signs that a plant isn't happy in low light? How will it signal to you that you need to move it somewhere brighter?
Well, I think it's going to just start looking kind of, it could start having yellow leaves. The problem with the low light, sometimes the way you know it's in too low of light is that it rots because you've given it water and it didn't have enough light to use all that water that you had given it. So a lot of times it's not even that it's dying from low light, it's dying from having too much water in a low light situation. A lot of people still water on a schedule, which I tell everybody not to do. Every week it gets water, whether it's using that water or not. That's because that's when I water my plants. I tell them to check it on a schedule, don't water it on a schedule. So, and it's going to start, you always see those snake plants, back to that ubiquitous snake plant, can't even say that word, that it starts flopping because it can't stay upright anymore because it's weak. It's a weak plant. It's reaching for light. Its leaves aren't as thick as it was. So it's just kind of flopping over. So a lot of plants will flop. They'll reach toward the light. If there is any, whatever light that they have, they're going to reach for it. They're going to start that phototropism and start leaning toward the light, trying to get as much as they can. So that's another indicator that it needs more light.
It's sad, really sad, when you see somebody, I've seen it many times where somebody's gone and bought a succulent, a rosette succulent like an echeveria or something from a non-specialist shop, and they've just put it on a very dark spot in their home and it's gone like a big firework just going up and up and up. The poor thing's searching for light. It's so common, isn't it, that this happens?
I feel bad because people love succulents so much and I do. I love them. I collect them, but I do have a sunroom that I can put them in. And they're all in like the south windows, the west windows, as close as I can get them. But a lot of people just think that you can buy these plants. It's kind of I don't know how they're getting these ideas that any plant can just go anywhere. I can put it in the middle of my dining room table. It doesn't matter what it is. And the light may be 20 feet away, but it's going to be okay because there's a window here and any plant can, survive. And they don't realize that most succulents, other than Haworthias, and some of the gasterias are so high light. And if they don't put them in high light, they're going to start flopping. They're going to lose their leaves. They're going to stretch. They're going to rot.
It all ends in disaster, doesn't it? If you've got a plant you've got your low light plant, but your room really is rather dark and gloomy, are there any sort of hacks that you can do to make the most of the light you've got or bounce it around in a different way?
Okay. So, if you can buy two same plants. So you have two. One is, if you can, one is in a better light situation. And this is more of that's like you really want that plant in that area because it's decorative. Not that maybe, because buying two plants and putting one in the light, I guess if you had light, you'd put the plant in that window, but you could grow you could put it under lights in another room or something. But if it's really someplace you really want a plant and there's not a lot of light, you can buy two and switch them out. So one is really healthy. The other one starts to decline you switch them.
That's ridiculously simple but clever. I can't believe I've never thought of that before.
Well, sometimes it works. It's like you buy two of the same plant and people don't even, because you go to a lot of these commercial buildings and people have these beautiful plants and you're like, and you think, well, that can grow there. Well, you don't know that with commercial. I used to work for an interior scaper, and they switch the plants out quite often to make them always look nice. So that's kind of just a thought. I know mirrors don't make a huge difference, but I do, mirrors are very in. If they're across the room from a south window, it's going to reflect, light onto your plant and give it a little boost, just a little boost. Light walls. I know dark walls are kind of in style. Everything in my house is pastel or white because it's reflecting light. No, there's no white in my house. Everything's pastel. I like color. The next door neighbor, how if you're close to a house or you're close to a building and they're painting it, it's dark gray seems to be the color to paint houses now, but you can talk them into painting their house white. It's going to reflect light into your window. Lose the awnings. I tell people, lose your awnings. Some people still have awnings on their house. Trim your trees outside. You don't have to cut them down. I would never cut a tree down unless it was dead or dying. But, you can always trim it and thin it out and let some more light into your house.
I hadn't really thought about the wall colour being an issue, but of course, yeah, that makes perfect sense that it would be. And it is so popular to have dark walls now, isn't it? I mean, I have got a dark navy blue kitchen, but it's not on every wall. It's only on, it's on one wall really. So the rest of it is white. So I guess that balances out. And I guess then if that isn't enough, then grow lights are the next logical step.
Yes. And I do have lights. I do have some plants under lights just because I like African violets. I'm in the African Violet Club. They all have lights. Plus it gives you more room to have more plants. If you can, utilize your basement or an unused bedroom that doesn't have a lot of light, you can put up a light stand and add more plants.
Yeah, those light stands, I learned about those when I did the episode with Annie Reek on African violets, and it's not something I'd really come across, but yeah, I think it should be striking terror into my husband's heart, the idea that I can kind of like make dark spaces very comfortable for houseplants by coming up with one of these light carts. I don't even know if you can buy them in the UK. I've not seen anything like that, but I've definitely seen them on American websites, and so no doubt they'll come our way eventually, or perhaps I've just been looking on the wrong sites here.
Well, I can't imagine that Gardener Supply doesn't ship over there.
Yeah.
They have a lot of fabulous light carts called, Gardener Supply. But you're lucky that if you just are starting it and coming into it, LEDs are the new thing, where I can honestly say that I'm still living kind of in the dark ages, as they say, with my T12 huge old fluorescent lights that are horribly not economical, and you have to have them on 12 to 14 hours a day. But I just haven't switched over. It just hasn't been a priority to switch over to because they're working, over to the LEDs. But I need to do that I don't have very many light stands. I just have a couple. Because it's so, you'd only have to leave them on like 4 to 6 or like 6 hours, 8 hours compared to 12 to 14. So it is much more cost effective. And
I guess over here in the UK, perhaps our power bills, I think, are probably higher than yours. Everyone's trying to save money on electricity. So and also I think LED lights, certainly IKEA has been selling LED grow lights for a lot longer. I don't know if they're out yet. Their ones are out yet in the US, but certainly they've been available for a while, which is where a lot of people start with grow lights, is with something very simple like that, screwing those into a normal lamp. So and then the bug bites hard and they end up buying all kinds of further high-tech stuff. But yeah, it's over here we're bitten by huge electricity bills, so everyone's kind of looking for a way of. I
do tell people that just even just having a plant, maybe the plant's getting decent light, and then at night you flip on your even if it's an incandescent bulb, or put one of those those fluorescents, those compact fluorescents, and you have that on for another 2 or 3 hours at night, it's still giving that plant light. Mm-hmm. Not a ton of light, but it's going to boost it a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, that's not a bad thing either. When
you get that situation where you've got somebody with an apartment and a low light situation, perhaps they've only got high, small windows, or does that also tend to indicate, if they don't have a lot of window space, that plants might be rather stuffy and air circulation might also be an issue? Do they kind of come hand in hand?
Well, that does make sense. I do have I have a spare bedroom that has those lights in them, and my sunroom. It was meant to have people in it. It's a sunroom with a brick floor, and then it has windows, but it's really just a plant room. And I do have fans going in both those rooms, ceiling fans. They're on every day, all day, all night, year round, just for air circulation, because it is kind of stagnant in that room. I have it closed off, and the lights add some heat to the room, so I do keep the fan going. So that does make a difference. And we did talk about that garden apartment. That was one thing we did add to the book, because I hadn't even thought about that, because I've never lived in an apartment. I got married, Midwestern girl, moved to the suburbs. So I never have lived in an apartment, and I had never thought about those garden apartments where you're down in the basement and you just have really high windows. And I'm like, well, you can either build a shelf on, maybe put a shelf on the window to make the window sill deeper, or use tree form plants so that maybe they're higher up already, plant stands. That is hard. Plus you're kind of at the level where people can look in. So, but at my house, the windows are so full of plants, no one can look in.
They become your curtains. Yes, that is a good way to go.
Yes, that's right.
This week's On the Ledge is sponsored by Babbel, the language learning app that will have you speaking a new language with confidence. My absolute favourite holiday ever was visiting Umbria in Italy. We stayed in a hilltop hotel which was absolutely gorgeous, set in the centre of an olive grove. Wow, it was an amazing trip, but I really wished during that trip that my Italian was better. People kept mistaking me for a local. It must have been my incredible sense of style. But anyway, I couldn't reply. I couldn't even say, "I'm sorry, I don't know what you're saying." And that's why I'd like to improve my Italian language this summer. And the great thing about Babbel is it's designed to get you quickly speaking your new language within weeks. Babbel's teaching method has been proven to be effective across multiple studies, and the lessons are really quick and convenient at just 10 to 15 minutes per session. And because the lessons are created by actual people rather than a machine, so you really are getting something that's been handcrafted and is tested and will work. You can try Babbel for free. Go to babbel.com or download the app and try it for free. That's Babbel, BABBEL.com, or download the app to try for free. Babbel. Speak a new language with confidence. We'll be back with Lisa Eldred Steinkopf in a little bit, but first it's time for Question of the Week, which comes from Lara. She emailed ontheledgepodcast@gmail.com, subject line, red underside of leaves query. She loves the podcast. Thank you, Lara. And she says she can't find the answer to her query about why it's common in certain plants, for example, the marantas and many begonias, to have red colouring on the underside of their leaves, even if the top side is a different colour. Why red? Lara from Sydney, Australia, that is a very good question. The plants that you've mentioned, the marantas and begonias, tend to live at understory level in a landscape. That means that they're generally not exposed to a heck of a lot of light. The first thing to say is that scientists aren't exactly sure why at the moment. I will post a link to at least one academic paper which talks about this subject, which if you really want to get deep into, it's worth having a look at. There is a theory that the red underside helps to reflect light back up into the layers of chlorophyll above, so that basically they maximise their light. So if any light doesn't get absorbed by the chlorophyll as it passes through on the way down, then it gets bounced back up. However, this paper that I found, which dates back to 2008, basically says that they did an experiment and discovered that theory, the backscatter hypothesis as they call it, which doesn't seem to support that as being correct. So what is going on? Well, one other paper I found from 2015 suggests that the red pigment, the anthocyanins, in the base layer of the leaf actually stops light passing through to the forest floor below. And it suggested that then stops other seedlings of competitor plants from germinating below the plant, reducing the competition. It should be said that the paper I'm talking about doesn't refer to begonia or calathea species, but to Saxifraga hirsuta, which is another species with red undersides to its leaves. So I can't say whether the authors of this paper would extend this to begonias and calatheas, but it's a very interesting theory, and it does point to the fact that really there's very great amounts that we still don't understand about how many plants that we grow commonly as houseplants actually work. And that's why it's so important that we have botanists studying this stuff in a rigorous scientific way so we can get some answers. And if you're a botanist and you're shouting at me right now because I've misexplained anything, or you have a better explanation for all this, then please do get in touch. I am always more than happy to be corrected by listeners. So if you've got wisdom on this subject, let me know straight away and we'll get you on the show. And now back to my shady chat with Lisa, where I dredge up a low-light plant from the very furthest recesses of my brain, which is quite a scary place, I can tell you. One thing that I've found that's done really well in low-light conditions, which we haven't mentioned, is, my gosh, my brain's gone completely blank. Tradescantius. Am I going to say Tradescantius spadacea? I'm going to just have to grab a book now just to make sure that I'm getting...
Like the Moses, the purple one, the Moses and the bulrush?
Yes, that's the one. That seems to do really well.
I don't know if it's Tradescantia or it's Rowie. I don't know how to say it.
Rio. I don't know either.
Yeah, I'm not very good at those. You know, I used to have one of those, but it kind of got long and lanky and it didn't speak to me.
I've got a sort of 3 of them that are sitting on the back of my kitchen, right next to the navy blue wall, and they seem to be doing really well without much light. Really, the only light they've got coming in is through the side door, which is west facing and frosted, I should say. And they seem to be really, really happy and provide me with so little in the way of maintenance that I'm very happy with them. The other one that are, like you say, with the snake plants, I have found that my snake plants that I put in very low light conditions really did start to look quite miserable. I guess your tactic for the switching out is a really good idea, because any plant, I would presume, put in the darkest corner of the darkest room, you know, that's just going to be too dark for possibly anything other than the double Z plant. They need perhaps to have a light holiday. Is that a good idea?
I know a lot of people take them outside. I don't, just because I have so many. It would take forever for me to take all my plants out. But I also feel like, you know, I've written about it. I have a Boston fern that's been in my family since, you know, my mom got it in 1957, but she got it from great grandma. So we've had it forever. I've had one in my house for 34 years, and it does drop leaflets. That's just what ferns do. But a lot of people bring them in from outside and they drop every leaf and they're just like, I can't grow it. But you know what? I think starting a plant, like you're saying, those Tradescantias or the purple plants, Moses and brushes or whatever you call it, that they grow well against your wall. I think a plant gets used to and acclimates to the situation it is in. So I have a friend who has a ficus benjamina, which is a very highlight plant, would prefer highlight. It is growing in her office with it. Now those there's fluorescent lights, and they're probably about, you know, it's 6 feet away from it. It's in a completely windowless room, and it's been in that room for years, and it's actually has new growth on it. It's not as scrawny as you would think it would be, and those lights are only on 5 days a week. So, I mean, that's a highlight plant doing pretty well in just plain fluorescent light for only 5 days a week, maybe 9 or 10 hours a day. So it's just gotten used to it. It's not the fullest plant. It's, you know, it's not like it would be if it was in full sun, but it's doing very well, and it's green and it's nice. So I just think once a plant, if you start out with a young plant, you know, and you acclimate it, it's acclimated to the spot that you have it in, and you leave it there. Sometimes they do well just because that's what they're used to. You're not moving it into highlight, back into this low light, outside, inside. Sometimes I don't think that's beneficial. You get them all pumped up and then you bring them back in, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, they're like, damn, we're back inside.
Yeah.
Are there any flowering plants that will survive in lower light conditions, or do they count themselves out because because by the fact they're flowering, they're just going to need more light.
Well, I do tell people, if it's a flowering plant, steer, if you don't have a lot of light, steer clear of it. But a peace lily blooms pretty good in not extremely high light, medium light. They still keep blooming, but I can't think of anything else. Maybe someone else can, that really blooms well in really low light. If you have an east window, you're going to get your if you have an east window with some good light, you could get your phalaenopsis, your African violet to bloom. And if somebody's like, well, I don't have any light and I get my African violet to bloom, then you have more light than what you think you do. Because if something's not blooming that should be blooming, the only thing that's going to make it bloom is more light, right?
I've got a curveball of a question here, which I've been meaning to ask an American expert because, you know me and Dr. David Hesseon, but one of the plants, you may know nothing about this, but I'm just so curious about this. One of the plants that I've been wondering about since I first got this book back in, what year was this published? Probably about 19... Gosh, I don't know. This was published in 1980. And I've never come across this plant. It's called the indoor oak. And Dr. Hesseon tells me that this is a rarity in Europe, but it's gaining popularity in the US, where it was introduced from Africa some years ago. So the Latin name is Nicodemia diversifolia. I've never seen or heard anything about this plant. I'm just wondering whether you, as an expert in the US, have ever come across it, or if it's just something that has kind of faded into complete obscurity.
And it's called Nicodema, like Nicodema.
Nicodemia, and it does say that it's a plant that can take semi-shade. But it's like a lost city of Atlantis of the houseplant world.
I can be honest and say, if I have seen it, I did not know that's what it was. No, I've never. I'm gonna get my website or my whatever you call it and see if I can see it, what it is.
Please do, because it's one of those ones I've been wondering about for the past, probably 40 years. I need to find the answer. So if anyone out there knows about Nicodemia, I sort of had it in the back of my mind because I knew that it was one that can cope with more shade than most.
What is the second name? Nicodemia what?
Diversifolia.
Diversifolia, okay. No, I've never.
So any intelligence on that? It just does look like an oak seedling, but apparently it's a good plant for semi-shade. So again, I guess some of these things have fallen out of favour, or possibly were never that popular in the first place. But I like to sort of seek out weird and wonderful things. So that was one thing I was reminded of when I was thinking about low light plants.
Well, it's on a bonsai site, and it's also called Buddleia indica, and it says it's from Madagascar.
Oh.
So there's not a lot of low light plants coming out of Madagascar, unless it's growing, under a rock or something.
The plot thickens. Wow. Well, I don't know about that. We'll try to see what we can find out.
And it says it was one of the old time houseplants that were used extensively from the 20s through the 40s. Well, maybe it needs to come back because nothing new under the sun. So it's got to be out there someplace. Yeah. He's using it as a bonsai. We'll have to look it up. Now you've got me on the search.
I know. Oh, sorry. The other sort of plant that was popular in the past, but is coming back and is great, I think, for low light, and perhaps is the old version of the double Z plant in terms of dealing with low light, is of course the Aspidistra. Are you an Aspidistra fan?
I am. I love Aspidistra. And then my friend just sang me that song about the Aspidistra. It's a song. I'm like, okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I have the greatest Aspidistra in the world or something, the biggest Aspidistra in the world or something like that. It's a really cute song.
There is a song. There is a really cute song. You're absolutely right. These plants, I guess, are double Z-like in their ability to just withstand really dark and miserable conditions. They don't grow very much, though, do they?
I will tell you that I have one. I have Milky Way, which of course is variegated. So we all know variegated plants need more light. And I had it near an east window, and it was very thick and fabulous because I have pictures of it. And then for the book, you can see it's a little sparse. It's still the same plant because I went to buy one we had to buy some plants to shoot because I didn't have every plant, which is unbelievable. But my husband's like, really? You don't? Are you sure? Or they may not have looked book worthy. Let's just say that. And my Aspidistra really wasn't book worthy, but it was, they were like $75. I'm like, I'm not spending, and it was just a plain green one. It's kind of floppy. I'm like, I'm not, I don't know. I can't. So I used mine, and and I had put it in a corner in my dining room corner, which has a west window, but it was the corner that was not, it was not getting any sun shining in. If I'd put it in the other window, it might have worked, when the sun swung around. And it got pretty sparse. So I'm putting it back into, back into higher light, trying to bring it back, especially after I saw how expensive they were. And then when I was in Chicago, at Sprout Home, I bought a variegated, like a white and green variegated one. It has about 6 leaves on it. I'm not going to tell you. Yeah, it was expensive, and I love it. But the dark green one, yes, will take very low light.
As you say, it's probably a more expensive alternative than buying a double Z plant, which seem to be very common now. But yeah, the Aspidistra is not a cheap plant to buy, that's for sure. I guess you can take comfort in the fact it should last you over 100 years, so that's a good thing.
But the ZZ plant here still isn't all that cheap here in America, and we do not have Raven yet. It is not available. I have not seen it commercially available yet. They said this fall.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Do you have the Raven?
Yeah, it's available here. It's available here. I'm actually, I've been trying to cultivate leaflets of a stem that I got sent. In fact, I'm just going to have a look at this now. It was all going so well, and then they kind of went a bit dead, some of them. So I don't know how many I've got left that are actually okay and on their way to. But it's very, very slow. They're very slow.
The dark. Well, and ZZ plants are, because actually it was funny. I had one of my daughter's friends was looking for a ZZ plant, and I told her where she could get one, and I had been there, and I told her the really, really big one, like in a 14-inch pot, was $100. And she's like, okay, I think I'll go back and get the 6-inch, maybe the $20 one or the $25 one. So they're still pretty pricey as plants go. You're probably not going to find one for under $10 at the very least. They're going to be $20 to $100. If you really want a great big one that would make a statement and fill a corner, you're going to spend upwards of $100.
Yeah, and are they popular in offices? Because they are a really big office plant here.
I assume they probably are. I have not. I haven't been in that business for a while, and I don't ever go to an office. But I think they would. I would be using them a lot. They're beautiful. I mean, it's such a shiny. They're shiny green. They can almost just live. They live in very low light. They're beautiful. I'm sure they're using them extensively.
Yeah, we used to have them in my office when I was working at The Guardian, and they were, they just didn't change. They just stayed exactly the same, which is, I guess, ideal in an office. You don't want office plants to grow massively out of their space or, do unexpected things. So that is why they are popular.
And that's another thing to tell people, is that when you have a plant in low light, it is not going to grow in leaps and bounds. And that's why those are a little pricier, like the Aspidistra and the ZZ plant. They don't grow very many leaves a year, so they're very slow growing. And so when you get a good sized plant, it's been growing with the grower for a long time, most likely. So that's why you may be paying a little more for them. So don't expect a plant that you have in a darker area to grow in leaps and bounds and just fill the corner immediately, because it's not going to happen.
I mean, if you're looking for something that's large and has some heft but won't grow quickly, is Monstera deliciosa a good choice there, in that it will cope with the low light, but it just won't put on so much growth?
I just got one, and mine is kind of in a higher light situation, and it's kind of getting bigger than what I want it to get. So yeah, it probably would be good for me to move it someplace where it's not going to get quite as much light, and slow it down a little bit.
When I was a kid, the doctor's surgery where I lived had this big Monstera in it, and I swear every time as a kid, I was into houseplants, so I was looking at this thing, and every time I went there I was thinking, it looks exactly the same. It doesn't move, nothing's changed, no leaves have grown, no leaves have died, it's just exactly the same, which is, I guess, why it was a popular plant for places like waiting rooms. It just was in stasis, waiting for conditions to improve.
Right, and that's a good, that is a good a thing to point out, that a lot of the interior plantscaping, they don't really want plants to outgrow their space. and they would have to trim them a lot and prune them a lot. So, and they are low light spots. So yeah, they're just kind of maintaining. They're not declining. You want your plant not to decline. You want it to either maintain or grow. So you have to give it at least enough light to maintain itself. If you see it start declining, then you know maybe it just doesn't have enough light, and you need to move it a little. Try somehow to get it a little more light.
It's a delight to have you on the show again and get your insight into low light plants. It's a wonderful area of experimentation, and provided that we're prepared for a few dropped leaves along the way, I think everyone can find a plant that works for them.
I think so. You know, if you have enough light to read by during the day, you should be able to find a plant, you know, without a light on. You should be able to find a plant that will survive at the very least for a while, you know, and before it starts declining, you know, and so find a plant that works for you, because everybody should have a little green in their life. That's my motto.
That is a great note to finish on. Thanks so much to Lisa, and you can find all the details of her new book, Grow in the Dark, in my show notes at janeperrone.com, where you'll also find a list of the plants we've talked about and a summary of Lisa's tips. And of course, reference to the Nicodemia diversifolia that we have a chat about, the strange Atlantis of houseplants. If you've got one of these sitting in your front room, I want to know about it. Any information you can pass on, I'd be more than grateful to receive. That rounds up this week's show. I'll be back next Friday for episode 100. I know the tension is incredible, but you're just going to have to wait till next week. And in the meantime, have a fantastic week with your plants. Take care. Bye. This week's ad music was provided by the Heftone Banjo Orchestra with Whistling Rufus and Dill Pickles. You also heard Overthrown by Josh Woodward. All these tracks are licensed under Creative Commons. See janeperrone.com for details.